This is A World on Purpose.
A purposeful life is the most important kind and the most valuable kind of life.
Every choice that we make makes a difference, for better or worse.
I loved walking in a village and seeing the before and after.
This is the podcast dedicated to those humans choosing to live larger by working for the greater good. And these are their stories. Stories of hope and of true change that come from living on purpose.
What if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities?
Regardless of where you come from, your financial identity shouldn't determine where you end up in life.
I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and my hope is that my inspiring guests will take you on an introspective journey that helps you tap into your own pivot to purpose, bringing greater meaning to your life. Welcome to A World on Purpose. Hey everyone, it's me, Alyssa, your host of A World on Purpose, and before we actually start today's show, I want to ask you if you can take yourself back to when you were 15. Do you remember what dreams and aspirations you had for your life? Was it to be an astronaut, an artist, maybe a doctor or an athlete? Whatever it was, imagine now that you had an unexpected situation that literally took your legs out from under you and seemingly derailed your dreams and the course of your life forever. How would you have handled that? Would you have let that also metaphorically paralyze you from pursuing your dreams and living your life's purpose? Or would it have been the very thing that awakened your purpose and drove you to succeed? That is exactly the stirring story that my guest today, David Cooks, shares as a man who has accomplished many extraordinary things, including being a speaker, an educator, a basketball and business coach, and author of the powerful book called Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose. When David and I first spoke, I wasn't just moved by his profound wisdom and the powerful guidebook he created, illustrating how he took his unexpected adversity and turned it into his life's purpose. I also deeply related to that conscious choice, having taken the same approach of using purpose to overcome my own adversities, only adding to my resilience. It can be very easy to let life's challenges metaphorically paralyze us, but when you listen to David today, you will see we have the power to make a different choice, enabling us to live our lives in a more full and meaningful way, no matter what life throws at us. I hope you enjoy this episode and the powerful life lessons we can learn from this extraordinary man. Please enjoy Mr. David Cooks. Hey everyone, welcome back to A World on Purpose with me, your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. And every week, I say this every time, you get probably sick of it, but it's just the truth. I am so lucky that I get to interview some of the most incredible human beings that are doing extraordinary things all around purpose. And today is a real special treat for me. This man that I have on the show today is a very dear friend of one of my business partners, and I am thrilled to have him here today. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Mr. David Cooks before I introduce him, just so you know how special and amazing and extraordinary he is. David Cooks is a keynote speaker, and he's shared the stage with other inspiring humans like Elizabeth Smart, Jordan Montgomery, and Ron White. But he's also a business coach, and he's an author of an amazing book that I just got into that I'm loving so much called Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose. And it's a book that encourages readers to keep moving forward regardless of the challenges that life puts in front of you. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit about that through the path to purpose. He's also a distinguished basketball coach with a really amazing career, working alongside coaches like Mike Krzyzewski from Duke University and the United States in Estonia and Finland with coaches Frank Martin and Guy Rancourt. A lot of other things he's done, which are pretty cool. 25 years in education, 17 years of which were at his alma mater, which is Marquette University High School, teaching economics and serving as the diversity director. And he also has multiple degrees, including an MBA in finance from Duke. But all of this he didn't just do out of the extraordinary for just doing it. He did all of this while at the same time being a T6 paraplegic. So I'd like to welcome my incredible, extraordinary, outstanding, and I'm so honored for him to be here. Welcome to A World on Purpose, David Cooks.
Well, it is my pleasure to be here with you. Been looking forward to this all day. I mean, this time couldn't come fast enough for me.
Thank you. Me too. And you look so nice. You look so handsome and dressed up, which is terrific.
Well, thank you. You look marvelous yourself.
Thank you.
Nice color. Is that Duke Blue you have on there? I think so.
I think it might be. I'm trying to do a little honorary plug there for you.
There we go.
So David, you and I met through a mutual friend of ours. I'm going to give a little shout out to my business partner and mutual friend, Jim Van Eerden. He reached out to me and he said, Alyssa, I'm loving your podcast. This is so great. You've got to interview my friend David. And when he told me your story, and then I got to meet you and talk to you about it, on our little pre-call, I literally left that call in tears. And it was tears of hope, not tears of sadness. It was tears of like, wow, the ordinary turned into the extraordinary. So you know what this show is about. It's all around purpose and talking about people's origin stories. And I'm getting a little teary as I talk to you about it. And their pivot to purpose. And so I'd love for you to just kind of start the way we always start, which is just sharing about you and how purpose became your mission, so that people can learn about your life journey and what got you here.
Well, thank you. I will try to keep this as brief as possible. I've got a lot of experiences that have got me to understand purpose, but I do want to go back to October 19th of 1979, if I can. And I was
Please.
15 years old, and I experienced a spinal aneurysm that day. I hadn't had any real symptoms or anything before. And in fact, I had gotten a clean bill of health the week before from my doctor, and had some back pain, and then ended up in a wheelchair a week later after a clean bill of health. That was what I call a life-changing event. It put me on a journey from paralysis to purpose, literally paralysis, physical paralysis to fulfilling purpose. But some things happened along the way that kind of helped me to understand how to move forward, how to persevere, the importance of perspective, the importance of perseverance, and the importance of partnerships. I'm grateful that I haven't had to make this journey alone. To me, that's one of the greatest things that I possess is friendships and support. And when I was in the rehab center at age 15, although the spinal aneurysm was life-changing, I met somebody named Tony Otters. And Tony was a quadriplegic who had experienced a diving accident. And he was my roommate. And Tony never complained about anything. He was so upbeat. And I began to understand as I was working in the rehab center to get better, how good I had it and how Tony would have given anything to be able to do some of the things that I could do. But his attitude and his outlook was just what I needed at that time. And the paralysis was life-changing, but Tony Otters changed my life. Tony Otters had vision. He had goals. He had dreams. He was going to become a doctor, he told me. He was going to go back to college. And sure enough, Tony Otters became a doctor, an MD doctor, not a PhD doctor, an MD doctor.
Oh, my God.
And that meeting him at age 15, coupled with my family, my faith, and other friends that helped me get through, really let me know that how I see something will determine how I attack it. And if you don't think there's opportunity or you don't think there's hope on the other side, it impacts how you work at it. It impacts how hard you go for it. And I worked hard in that rehab center for Tony Otters. He motivated me to work for him. And that's when I began to understand the joy of serving others. And we all have different avenues and roads and journeys that we take. But I believe that our purpose is all the same, and that's to make other people's lives better.
Absolutely.
However you do that and whatever your mechanism is. For me, basketball was such an important part of my life that I was able to parlay that into impacting youth for the last 30 years. And so that's kind of where I am today. It started there. I was able to go to college, get my degree. I had struggles and things along the way. I don't know if we talked about these or not, but I remember getting to college and being around people that were in wheelchairs. I had never done that before. I didn't see that. And I was nervous. Mm-hmm. I was unsure. I actually was treating them the way other people had actually treated me. I was staring at them and not sure what they could do. And part of my evolution was getting to know people that were like me so that I could know who I was.
Wow.
And so we had those types of struggles. We had some, but I think those are, I call it the evolution of revelation. Because things are revealed over time and it does evolve. And so I learned to just really value people for who they were and where they were, and knowing that we're all kind of in this world together. And the sooner I could figure that out, it helped me a great deal. So, I went to college, ended up being a banker, loved banking. I think it was by far my best job ever. For me, it was a perfect mix for me. I love people. I love critical thinking. And so I got to do deals and also entertain people at sporting events. So I was right up my alley. And I had a mentor at the bank, a guy named Mark Hogan. And Mark was my mentor. And he challenged me on a professional level and challenged me also on a personal level. And on a personal level, what I mean is he knew how much I loved the game of basketball. And he's like, you've got this thing that you're passionate about. You've got to do something with that. That can't go dormant. And his encouraging me to do that led me to coaching at various places at many levels, including Duke University and representing the United States overseas, and coaching at my alma mater, which was a fantastic experience. But I was grateful. When we talk about partnerships, Mark Hogan was one of those people, and I still talk to Mark today, who challenged me but encouraged me. He was demanding, but he wasn't demeaning. All those types of things, and without that bit of encouragement, I may have never had the courage to leave corporate America over 25 years ago, take a 70% pay cut, live in a one-room townhouse on a college campus because I knew I needed to follow my dreams and purpose. And that I had to put the spreadsheets and suits away for sweatpants and computers. And it was one of the greatest decisions I think I ever made.
Oh God, I can't even tell you how much I love that story. I wanted to ask you a little bit about when you talked about your spinal aneurysm. When we talked about, you said it's a very rare thing to happen. So, that was something that just doesn't happen very often. And when that happened to you when you were 15, that obviously set the trajectory, you said, for the rest of your life. When it first happened to you before you met the extraordinary quadriplegic, and obviously that seemed to be one of those moments where you kind of compared in a way like, oh my God, I can still move my arms and my head and whatever. Do you feel that at that young of an age, when you probably were aspiring to be, a great basketball player and all these other things, you seem to already have that kind of will inside of you, but do you feel that for people who are going through that kind of situation and don't have somebody present themselves in that way, would it have been harder for you had that not happened for you with him, do you think? Or what are some things you could share with people who might be experiencing some huge astronomical physical or emotional challenge, and maybe they don't have someone show up in front of them like that?
Well, I think I can't answer what would have been because of what is,
right,
but
sure.
I can say this. I was fortunate to have a support system outside of the rehab center, and my mom and my dad and my brothers and sisters and the like. Without that, with that, it's difficult. Without that, it's not impossible. It's just more difficult. And so, I think one of the things that I've learned to do since then is look for the positive and look for the productive. Focus on the possibilities. And one of the things that I think will help people when they're in difficult times, it helped me, was to be able to measure yourself in terms of your outcomes. We talk about desired outcomes in the coaching business and consulting business. And if you give yourself some desired outcomes, and they can be little steps, little things that you want to accomplish, it builds your self-esteem. It lets you know you're capable of doing something. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is we try to go too fast and we try to eat too much. And we bite off too big a piece, and it's hard to digest and swallow that. So in the absence of others to help you, look around and just see. Gratitude might be the most important tool you have in the face of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. One's going to have to sit down while the other takes its place. So to find some things that you're grateful for, it can be something as simple as just being alive that day.
Mm-hmm.
It can be being able to see. I mean, just all those types of things that sometimes we take for granted. Because I tell you what, the one thing I have learned over time is that there is somebody that has it a lot worse than I have it, and that would love to be in my shoes,
Mm-hmm.
would love to have had the experiences that I've had. And for that, I stay grateful. I every day I wake up and I thank God that I've got another day. And as long as there's still time on the clock, so to speak, I can still participate in the game.
Yeah.
And not only participate in the game, but I can change the outcome of the game by how I participate.
Absolutely.
And so that's the mindset, and part of that mindset shift is important in the midst of daunting circumstances that are very real, that can be very difficult. Now, look, I've cried many a tear.
Sure. Yeah.
You're
human.
I'm human,
Mm-hmm.
and there are days I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like getting in and out the car or getting in and out the shower, the things that it takes a lot of extra work to do now.
Mm-hmm.
But purpose drives me past frustration. And I have to get past those points because I know there are people that are tied and assigned to my purpose that I must fulfill for their benefit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't afford to miss that because, as you know, purpose is always bigger than you.
Absolutely.
It's never quite, it's for you, but it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for others too. And so that is kind of what keeps you going. And once you lose that, hopefully you would have transitioned to the next life. But up until then, I tell people this all the time. My dreams and goals and passions, they didn't become paralyzed when I became paralyzed, because they were inside of me, and they still live today. And the adversity and the difficulty that you face in life, they won't redefine you or your goals, but they'll redirect the route you have to take. If you want to get there, you can. It may not be the way you thought. I never thought if you told me 40 years ago I'd be talking to you today and sharing my story across the country and potentially around the world, I'd have been like, what are you talking about? I didn't know that then. But what I knew then was if I lived and tried to win every day, just one at a time, because that's enough in that day. And some days I just go to bed early. I'll be so frustrated. I got to get out of this day.
Sure.
And come back the next day. So
yeah,
that's that's kind of how I deal with life. Dealt with it then and continue to deal with it now.
Yeah, I think that's really profound. I also love that you talk about giving yourself permission to not have a great day. Like, that's really important, especially when you've experienced a lot of adversity, which, I have also. And same thing. Like, sometimes it's just, I just don't feel like being that positive person today, even though that's your mission, that's who you are. It's okay to give yourself permission to have that bad day. It doesn't mean you've gotten off track.
No, not at all. In fact, that's being authentic.
That's right.
And you hear a lot about being your authentic self. Well, that's part of that authenticity is the reality of, I don't know anyone who's always upbeat and happy.
Yeah.
People say that I am, but I'm like, you don't see me all the time.
Right.
But we all have to go through those things, and that's part of our journey. It's part of learning how to cope and deal with it, knowing that, okay, you know what? It's a little tough today. I'm going to, but tomorrow I'm gonna get you. I'm coming back tomorrow, because this too shall pass, and that day sure does, and sure do those things that were irritating and frustrating us, and we kind of move forward with that.
Right. I 100% agree. Out of all that too, I'd love to know a little bit about your coaching and like what kind of inspiration you were able to give to your players, because for them to know your story and to be able to impart this kind of wisdom, did you ever come across players who, I mean, I don't know how they couldn't not get profoundly moved by you and be more motivated to be better versions of themselves and do things.
Well, yeah, I'll say this. It went both ways. And a lot of those players that I coached motivated me and inspired me because they had stories too.
Sure.
And when you found out some of the things they had to overcome, the things they deal with, it inspired me to be a better coach. You know, I started coaching basketball. I was actually a sophomore in college, and I would come home and I would help coach summer leagues for college players and stuff, and kind of got going there. And eventually, you know, I started coaching some AAU teams and traveling and stuff. And when I got my first head coaching job, it was at Darien High School in Darien, Connecticut. And I was just thrilled to get it. I was so excited. I had just left Duke, and I just wanted to coach. I wanted to do it. We weren't very good. And I knew that going in, that we had the odds stacked against us. But what I wanted to do was kind of just change the culture and make us respectable in our conference. And I remember the first day the AD introduced me as the head coach, and he said in the newspaper and to other people, I forgot he was in a wheelchair. I just watched how he interacted with the players. That to me meant everything, because they saw my ability and not my identity. And you can get caught up in identity, and people can forget what it is that you do. And those young men gave me everything they had every day. I was not the easiest guy to play for. I demanded a lot. Didn't take excuses, probably because of my situation. And I know how hard it takes to achieve excellence. And they gave me everything they had. And they taught me lessons about how to win when you have losses going on, how to lose gracefully, how to keep learning in the midst of a loss, and how a winning attitude and a winning season and a winning life does not mean that you won't experience loss. What it does mean is that you learn how to take loss and flip it into a winning situation for you. Those guys taught me that. We had one season where we went winless. We were 0-0, did not win the game, 0-20. And probably the best coaching year of my life. I learned so much about how to keep the ship afloat, so to speak, and how to keep people motivated to keep coming to practice every day and working hard, even though you weren't seeing the results that you wanted to see on the scoreboard. That's the stuff they taught me, because they could have quit, and they motivated me. I mean, there were times I was like, man, I don't know, did I do something wrong here? You know, and they kept coming and they kept believing, and they began to measure themselves outside of the game and how much they were getting better each day in practice. It taught me a lesson about, you know, sometimes you got to get away from the big picture and start to look at little things and have little victories. And those guys throughout the years, that was my first head coaching job. When I came back to my alma mater here in Milwaukee, that was like a dream come true to do that and to coach these young men and to see them. It was therapeutic for me as well, though. You know, they got to do something that I couldn't do, that I wanted to do. And to be a part of helping them achieve something that I couldn't, again, that was rewarding for me. I never thought before, you know, getting my head coaching job, when I went to get my MBA at Duke, I just went to get my MBA. I wasn't, I wanted to be involved in basketball if I could. I thought I had something to offer, but I didn't know Coach K or anybody down there, but I was willing enough to go and knock on some doors and wait for the answer to be whatever it was. And if they said no, I was going to still figure out a way to make it yes somehow, whether that meant going to the games or whatever. But after three times trying to go meet Coach, on the fourth time, I finally got to meet him, and the rest has been history. And that was a great opportunity for me, and you know, catapulted my coaching career a little bit, and allowed for me to see things from a different plateau. You know, I had never been in a situation like that, with that level of expectation and that level of standards and that level of winning. And what that meant to see from that place was it changed. That changed how I saw things too,
Yeah.
and the importance of details, of paying attention to detail, and the importance of building relationships. The one thing that Coach K did, I thought better than anyone I'd ever been around, was establish relationships with every one of his players.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time. And each player had a different type of relationship with him, and you could see it. And he was able to determine what were the things that would motivate them, how could I correct them, and each one was different. And I was like, wow, that takes a lot of time and intentionality
Mm-hmm.
for that to happen. And so I've just been fortunate to learn some great lessons from the game along the way, and have been as motivated by the people I've been with as probably my life has motivated them.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I want to talk as we get into the show about the basketball was obviously a huge focus for you, and obviously many life lessons in that experience, but all of the other things that you've been able to do through business and financial literacy programs and diversity and inclusion, all those things I want to get into a little later. But before we do that, something you just said about going and knocking on that door and making sure it was going to happen, even if you had no way of getting in there, that falls into what you've written about in your book. And you have several different P's in your book. But before we talk about the book, because that is one of the P's that you just said, and I want you to touch on it for people to know what that is, I would love for you to tell the story about how this awesome book that I'm absolutely loving, Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose, came about. And it was a story that you shared with me, which was so moving to me. Would you share that, the one of the airplane and going into the hospital?
Yes. Absolutely. I left my job at Marquette High in the spring of 2016. It was after 17 years there. I told my wife one morning, we were eating breakfast or sitting at the table, and I said, I think my assignment is up at the high school. And she said, all right, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm not sure. I think I'm supposed to write a book. I know I want to do public speaking and some other things. So I got her blessing and we moved forward. And so on December 5th of 2016, I was flying to Boston. I had just gotten signed by a speakers bureau, and I was flying to Boston to give this speech to a bunch of banking executives. And it was going to be an opportunity to really put me on the map, so to speak. About halfway through that flight, I began to have some problems breathing. And one of the flight attendants asked if I was okay. And I said, well, I'm having trouble breathing. And they asked me, well, would you like some oxygen? And I was like, well, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking oxygen's never killed anybody, so I'll take some oxygen. What the heck? And so they give me the oxygen, and I tell them, I said, look, I have to give a speech when I get off the plane. I need you to have the EMT here to take me to the emergency room, because I'm assuming I have a virus or something. So that they did that for me. I end up at Massachusetts General Hospital in the ER room, and they ran some tests and did some things, and the doctor comes in and he says to me, Mr. Cooks, I said, yeah. He said, well, you're not going to be going anywhere. I said, what do you mean I'm not going anywhere? I got to give a speech, man. I flew in, I got myself together, I'm ready to go. And he said, well, you have submassive blood clots in your lungs. And if we don't take care of this, you won't be going anywhere. Wow. And when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I won't be going anywhere. And so we'll get this taken care of. And so, as I stayed in the hospital, it was so interesting because there were no hospital beds in the entire hospital.
Wow.
So I stayed in ER for longer than normal before they could find a room, and it was a room in ICU. They ran some tests and did some things to get rid of the blood clots. I had a procedure done. And so I'm up in ICU getting this round-the-clock care. I mean, I didn't need it, but I was taking it. I mean, they were taking care of everything. I was like, oh, absolutely, this is very nice. And while I was there were some former students. There were some former students who actually were doctors there. I didn't know that, but they heard I was in the hospital. And so they began to come up and talk to the other physicians and tell them, who I was, some of my story, those types of things. And so
keep going.
And so, and so they began to tell these doctors who I was and all this types of stuff. And so one of the doctors came into me and he asked me, where's your book? And I was like, I've been thinking about it. I just haven't sat down to really get it done. And I know I need to do that. Well, then my wife arrives and another doctor comes in and asks her, he needs to write a book. Where's his book? And I was like, okay, I think I get it now. I know I need to write this book. So I get to leave the hospital and I thank the doctors for everything. And I get home and I have a couple of speaking engagements lined up that I had to fulfill, but then I canceled everything else. And I shut things down, came in this room right where you see I am now. And I began to write the book called Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose. And I knew I was supposed to write a book. And I also knew I was supposed to speak and be a speaker and coach. So I was actually on my road of purpose. I was just out of order on the road.
Mm. Oh,
I
wow.
was supposed to do the book first and then speak. I wasn't supposed to speak and put the book off. And let me tell you why I was putting the book off, because I was uncomfortable doing that.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
I'm gifted to talk and speak to people. I've been blessed to communicate. So this is easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
Writing a book was a stretch. So I put it off until I couldn't put it off anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could put into words the sense of satisfaction when I held my first copy of that book,
mm-hmm.
It was amazing to me. That sense of accomplishment and pride was just what I needed to get through that. See, on the other side of an assignment, other than a grade, is an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling and emotion of accomplishing that was fantastic. And so that's how the book came about. The actual title, Getting Undressed, for those who are interested in the book, this is not a sequel to one of those Shades of Grey book.
That's good.
That's not going to be in here. But what it was, getting undressed for all of us is something we all do, and it represents a change, branding,
mm-hmm.
Beginnings, endings, all that type of stuff. But for me, it was all about regaining my independence.
Mm-hmm.
It was about the night in the rehab center when no one was able to help me come and get undressed.
Oh.
I had to teach myself how to get undressed. They taught me how to get dressed, but not how to get undressed.
Oh my.
And that night I sat there and I figured out how to get undressed. Mm. And that was the beginning of me going home after 2 months of physical therapy instead of 6.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how the title of the book, Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose, came about.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that. That is extremely powerful. And I love the metaphor because it says a lot about life, but also your personal experience. We're going to really dive deep into the book and a lot of the amazing words of wisdom and stories that you share in the book. And this is a great place for us to take a real quick break. So everyone, we're going to take a quick break and grab some water, and we're going to come back with my amazing guest, David Cooks. We'll be right back with you. Okay, everybody, we took a quick break and now we're back with my uber awesome guest, Mr. David Cooks. Love diving into this stuff with you, David. I can't even believe that I'm honored to get to sit here with you and share these incredible stories. We were just talking about your book and Getting Undressed, Paralysis to Purpose, and the way that it came about, which is super profound. I have a question for you. When you were talking earlier about like why you put it off, for anybody who's been through a lot of adversity, and I know I'm one of them, people have said to me my whole life too, you should write a book, and I actually was an English major. I wanted to be a writer. But when it came to writing my story, for me, it was like almost humility to a fault. Like, well, I'm just one story. Everybody's got one. Why would anybody want to hear mine? Did you ever feel that way? Or were you pretty much just like, it's just not the right time? Like, did you ever experience any of that?
Yeah, for me, it was more probably that humility thing, or, I'm a pretty private public person, if that makes sense.
Totally.
But it's one of those things where I had to come to understand that what I had to give was greater than what I didn't want to give. and that people wanted to know my life's experience. They wanted, people were gleaning from me all around me all the time, and they were wanting to know, well, how did you get through that? And how did you do that? And once I began to understand that, then I could write the book about myself. Because as I've come to understand, I've gotten better rather at talking about myself. I'm just not wired that way. That's not what I like to do.
Right.
But I've come to understand that that's part of what I need to do to fulfill the purpose I've been put on earth for. And I also began to realize that purpose was tied to my natural giftings. My natural giftings of communication and my ability to connect with people. When we first met, it was about 3 minutes in, and there was a connection. Though I don't take credit for those. I'm grateful for those things, those gifts that I have that causes that. And so once I kind of got past, I call it false humility now, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to understanding that there is nothing wrong with having a sense of pride about who you are and about what you've accomplished. It's okay to share that with somebody. It's okay to write that down. That was as big a hurdle for me as just my dislike of reading and writing. Okay. I can do that. I just don't like to do that. The other part was areas where I had to actually grow and learn from.
Wow. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I've struggled with that my whole life, and you're inspiring me, because I think it's time for me. And
and you're right. Everybody's always telling you what to do.
Great.
You should write a book. I heard about the book and I heard about speaking. And you know what? After a while, if people keep saying the same thing over to you, and they're not the same people, and they're saying the same thing, you might want to just listen to that. That might be a message to you saying, yes, I do need to write a book.
Yeah.
And I do need to do that, because those voices and those people never stopped coming to me saying that. Like, man, when are you going to write the book? You should put this in a book. You should, over and over. So that was pretty important for me too.
Awesome. Well, thanks for answering that.
I look forward to your book.
Thank you. I'm hoping it's going to happen. I mean, I'm not hoping. I know it's going to happen now, especially because you've just ignited that flame to be able to do it. So let's talk about the book, because it's awesome. So the way you organize this book, I love the titles, and you have chosen very understandably different chapters with the letter P, starting with the letter P. And you alluded to one of them in your earlier story about being able to get hired to work with Coach K at Duke. Can you talk a little bit about the structure of the book, what it's intended to do? And then I want to ask you some specific stories that really resonated with me when I was reading it.
Okay. Yeah. The book is structured. There's 18 chapters in the book, which is more than when I start writing. I actually stopped at 12 chapters, and then I was having to add here and add there. Next thing I know, it ended up 18 chapters. And the book begins with October 19th of 1979, that Friday morning on my way to school. It takes you through the aneurysm, all the way through my high school graduation, college graduation, my professional experiences, coaching experiences, all the way through a faith experience, and then how I define purpose. And each of the chapters starts with not only something with the letter P, perseverance, possibility, pain, promotion, that type of thing. There's also a quote that goes with each chapter. And I wanted to have people to be able to, before they read the chapter, to be inspired by a quote that I had said at some point in life. And that's kind of how the book flows. It is a quick read. It's a page turner, I think is what they call it, because they turn the page so fast.
It is. I can attest to that.
One of the goals when I wrote the book was I wanted people to enter into my story. And as they read it, I wanted them to feel what I felt and be a part of what I was going through. And I think we succeeded with that. I didn't have a particular audience in mind when I wrote the book. I thought whoever read the book would get what they needed from the book. And that is proven true from adolescents to senior citizens, business people, to lay people, to pastors, whomever. And so to that end, I'm really grateful that my life has been full enough that there's multiple things that I've experienced that can touch people right where they are. If I could give you a really quick story that's not in the book about the book.
Please.
I published a book on my, book was released rather on my birthday, August 6th of 2018. August 6th of 2018, the book was published. And that September, I got an email from a lady, and she said she had gotten the book, and she had tried to stop smoking a number of times in her life. And the most recent was June of that year. And she had been smoking 2 to 3 packs a day for like 35 years. Oh. And so she sent me this email and said, I read your book and it was so inspiring. And I've decided I haven't had a cigarette since, and I am now stopping. And when I read that, I teared up like, oh my God. I mean, this book has changed somebody's life in that magnitude. And so I was like, I'm not sure how I want to believe this or not. So I arranged to meet with her. And I did meet with her. I met with her in January, 4 or 5 months later than her email. And she still had not smoked another cigarette. And I was so grateful that I wrote the book for her.
Right.
Because I didn't know what it was going to do. But when she read it, that's what it did for her. Mm-hmm. And there have been several people who maybe not have stopped smoking, but they were in difficult places in their lives and they were able to pick that book up and move forward. So I am so glad I completed that assignment, even though it was difficult at the time. Mm-hmm. So now let's dig in to some of the questions.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, quickly too, when you're on a path to purpose and you know that your life is something greater than yourself, it isn't always just about masses of people that you're trying to touch. It is about that one life that you can really make a difference in and hopefully lift or inspire through our experience, right?
That's right. That's right. One life. I've often said, I would not have had to sell another book after that day. Mm. Seriously. I mean, I have, but,
yeah, of course.
but after that, I was like, wow, I'm good.
So meaningful though. I just really appreciate that sentiment. So let's talk about the P's. One of them you said, perseverance or persistence. Yeah, that was obviously what got you hired. What are some of the other profound P's that you think people can take away from when they're really forging this path to purpose or something that's challenging for them in their life? Can you impart some words of wisdom around?
Sure. The tools? Yeah, I think the tools, the first one is perspective. I think everything starts with your perspective, because your perspective is what drives your performance, and your performance is what drives your outcomes. Mm-hmm. And so it starts with how you see things and your perspective on it. And are you able to, and how do you do that? Well, for me, I had Tony Otters and family and friends, but sometimes it's about reflection and quieting yourself and just thinking for a moment, because your perspective will be driven by how much gratitude you have. I believe that. If you can find a way to be grateful, find a way to be thankful, can't explain it, how that happens, that it changes how you see things. And it's like all of a sudden you can see the sun coming up through the clouds. The clouds are there, but you start to see things a little differently. So that perspective for me is huge. We talked about perseverance. How bad do you want to change? How bad do you want to move? When you finally get that in there, nothing's going to stop you. Mm-hmm. That's the attitude of perseverance that has to take place. And it means it's tough. It's difficult to have perseverance. It's a fight. It's a battle, and you have to fight for your happiness. You have to fight for your joy. You have to fight for your friendship. You got to fight for those things to keep them going. And that takes a lot of perseverance. You can't quit. You can't give up. You may have to take a round off and take, you got to get back in the ring. You got to get back in the ring and go after it. So that's another P. Possibilities. Your perspective will point you to possibilities if that's where you're looking. How can we are in this situation now where COVID has left us all with some form of paralysis, the inability to function fully. So the question is, what can I find now that I can do now that things have changed? What are the possibilities on the horizon? When the dust settles, how can I position myself? There's another P, your position. How can I position myself for possibilities? And that becomes really important. How you see things, focus on what you can do, not what you cannot do. If I focused on what I could not do, you're not walking, you're not playing basketball, there's all these things, that would occupy all of my mind and all of my time. But I'm responsible for what occupies my time and what occupies my mind. I'm responsible for that. And I have the right and the privilege, there's another P, to monitor that, to monitor what I do and what I think. That's on me. And so those are some of the things that really helped me pull me through. Prayer was very important. Faith in my life and my family's life became profoundly important. It was always important, but on a personal level, it became important for me. And that's what made a change, helped me as well. It was my prayer experience, was my prayer story. And then the purpose thing we talked about. We went from paralysis, we had some possibilities, some perseverance, we had some partnerships, we had some pain, and then bam, we can get to purpose. All of those things together help define you to fulfill your purpose. I remember when I got fired as the head coach at Marquette High School. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Wow.
We had won 70% of our games, and I had taken our team to the first state state championship. We didn't win it, but we went for the first time, and I thought we were good. And I remember sitting in my office with my boss and him saying, we're going to go in another direction. And I was like, well, where are we going? Because I didn't know what he was talking about.
Weird metaphor.
Yeah. I was like, where are we going? Because we just got through talking about next season and the jerseys and everything else. And eventually, I looked at him and I said, I think, are you firing me right now? And he put his head down and I was devastated. It came out of left field. I mean, I still had my teaching job and everything else, but someone I got a gut punch right there.
Yeah.
You're no longer going to be a part of this. You're not welcome to do that here. You can do this other part. That's how I took it. Ultimately, I figured out that everybody needs something at some point to move them to what they're supposed to do next. If I had never gotten fired at Marquette High from basketball, I stayed and did my teaching. I would have never gone to Concordia University as an assistant coach. I would have never gone over to Estonia with USA East Coast basketball, because I would have still been at Marquette High School coaching when I wasn't supposed to be. And once I understood that about getting fired and about difficulties, I continued to learn these throughout my life. Is that, okay, there's got to be meaning in this because I still have purpose to fulfill. What is my next thing? And I look back at that situation. I call that in the book, that's the chapter called promotion. I call getting fired a promotion because it literally catapulted me back into the college game as a coach, and to represent the United States over in Estonia I would have never been able to do those things. So, at the moment, it was difficult. I mean, I wanted to punch that guy in his throat, to tell the truth.
Sure,
and you feel those things, but I knew I couldn't do that. But I was so upset and disappointed and hurt by that, because I had put so much into it.
Sure,
and sometimes we put so much into something, and it's something that we love, and then we lose it or it's taken away. I mean, I know you can speak to those things. that's a difficult place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, but boy, I did a whole lot of reflecting, regrouping, and relaunching during that period.
Yeah.
I sit down and think about the good things that I did. What didn't I do so well? If I get another chance, what can I do differently?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized I still had some fuel left in the gas tank, and I wanted to do some more with it. And so I got back out once I quit crying and everything. I wiped my tears and got back out there and start coaching again. So
That's so cool. How long did it take you to get from the anger and devastation to that pivot?
that was probably 4 months or so. I remember it was Easter break when I got fired, and school started again the next year in September. And I was sitting there, you know, they were still interviewing. They were interviewing people for my job, and I was sitting there sulking. And I'm like, wait a minute, they have moved on. They're interviewing me for my what? So I had to kind of shake myself and say, now wait, if they've moved on, then I need to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just, there was one of the aha moments, you know, where it's like, they're not thinking about you, Cooks. You're thinking about them, and they've moved on to what they need to do. That was it. After that, the anger, the bitterness, all that went away. But it took me 3 or 4 months to kind of to process it all.
Right.
Because it was a disappointment.
Wow. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier too, and giving yourself permission to feel, those moments. So that's great.
I wasn't applauding. I wasn't like, thank you.
No,
Thank you.
of course not. Of course not. We're not usually applauding when we're in those tower moments, as they call them, tower moments.
That's right.
That's a great place for us to take a real quick break again, because there's a really beautiful story in the book that really stuck out for me that I want to talk about, which is another pivot of your career, which is so cool, as a radio host, and an amazing story with somebody a life that you touched out of that. So we're going to take a quick break, and everyone just go grab some water and come back and listen to the rest of David Cook's story, because I think you're going to find it just extraordinary, motivating, impassioned, and it's going to want to help you step on that path to purpose if you're not already on it, or be able to actually forge the path if you are. So take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back with David Cooks, and we've been talking about his incredible book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose. And David, you were talking about the structure of the book with all these wonderful P's that are easy for people to remember as tools in their toolbox. I was reading through your book, and there was one part that stood out for me as a man who's accomplished all of these incredible things, business, degrees, working in banking, being a basketball coach, all this awesome stuff. You also kind of got really that P in perseverance. You pushed yourself into a role of being a radio host at a university. And I wanted you to talk about what that was like and what it actually inspired around this woman that heard you and came to you with a big problem that she had that was profoundly personal. Can you share that story?
Absolutely. I started radio in high school, believe it or not. We had a station in the basement called The Wave, WAVE. And Jim Van Eerden and I started doing radio. We both loved contemporary Christian music, and we had like 40 albums or something. And so we'd go down there and we spin music and all that kind of stuff. And when I went to college, it was one of the things I wanted to do. I said, people were always saying to me then, man, you've got a voice. You need to do some radio. You need to do voice work. You've been gifted with this voice. And I heard that a lot. And so I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to try to do this. And so I ended up, much like at Duke, going up to the radio station and knocking on their door and saying, hey, I'm a freshman here, and I'd like to do a radio show. And they were like, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I'm thinking of doing a Christian music show that will be really diverse in terms of all the different styles of music and everything. And they were like, okay, well, we haven't had one. Let me look into that. In the meantime, they wanted to hook me up with the jazz show. And so I worked with someone on that to kind of get trained and loved every minute of it. And they were like, man, you're kind of a natural at this and everything. And I said, well, thank you. And I said, I just hope I can get my own show. Well, it turns out that I did. Not only did I get my own show, they gave me a 4-hour Sunday morning slot, which was twice as long as anybody else's show.
That's so cool.
I did that for 4 years and absolutely loved it. My freshman year, second semester freshman year, I remember this like it was yesterday. I was in my dorm room, and I think it was a Saturday. And I get a knock on my door, and I open the door, and there's a young lady there with red hair, and said, "Hi, aren't you David Cooks?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "Well, hey, I've listened to your radio show, and someone told me you're a Christian, and I just want to come and talk to you." So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm a freshman. I'm 18 years old. I'm not sure what she wants to talk about. I thought all the girls on campus liked me, so I thought she was just coming to. She likes me. And so she began to talk to me, and she began to share something very personal with me. And she said to me that she was pregnant and that she was scared, and she didn't know what to do. She was afraid of how her parents would respond. She was afraid of how her friends would respond. And she was on the brink of, do I abort the child or do I keep the child? I heard that, and I had to just kind of close my eyes, my inner eyes. I want to make sure I was looking at her and just think for a moment and say, God, you know what? I've never been in this situation before. What do I do? And I remember telling her that there are many women in the world who have faced what she has faced and have overcome it and done very well. And I told her, and this is amazing that I said this at such a young age, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure. And what I mean by that is that none of us sign up for adversity or difficult things, because if we had a choice, we would choose not to go through them. But we aren't given the choice sometime. But what we are given is the strength to get through whatever we are facing. And it may not seem that way as you're faced with it. She didn't know that she could get through that. She didn't know that there was something on the other side. So she left my room. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. I was grateful that the radio show had that type of impact. And so I graduated from college, and I went to visit a church on a Sunday morning on the east side of Milwaukee. And I go in, and the service is ending, and I get a tap on my shoulder. And I turn, and it's a lady, and she's got red hair. I didn't think much of it. And she said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Not really. I don't." She told me who she was. And she said, "Here's my son." And his name is David.
Oh my God.
And I was another moment where I didn't realize the impact of what the things that I just loved to do was meant for other people or meant to other people. I didn't know that. That was one of those watershed moments that when I began to write the book, and I wanted to have experiences that would move people beyond just me. That's one of the first ones I thought of. And I remember that look on her face when she told me she was pregnant. And I remember that big old smile on her face when she showed me her son, and that she named him David. That was another one of those moments, like meeting the lady who had stopped smoking. At that point, I didn't have to do another radio show. I didn't have to do anything. And I was 18 years old. Wow. I was a freshman when that happened. And so those are the types of stories that make the book special.
Oh, so many. And one more I want to mention that stuck out to me around that particular story too, because again, thinking about the adversity you go through in your life kind of makes you wise beyond your years. Sometimes to be 18 and to give such sound advice to a young lady who didn't know what to do. You also said something to her that stuck out at me. You said, "I told her my belief that if this is in your life, you're equipped to handle it and overcome it. And instead of asking why me, ask why not." Yeah. Could you talk about that? Because I think a lot of people feel that, especially now, like, why me? Why the world? Why? And what did you mean by that?
Well, I meant a couple of things. One, I'll start off by saying the most unanswered question in the world is why.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also the most asked question. So there is something in us that wants to know why, because we think knowing why will make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted her to understand that you have the strength to deal with this. Why not you? Why would you want, why is it so easy for us to want someone else to carry the burden when we have it already? And I wanted her just to understand, and this is just how I believe, if it's in your life, then you're equipped to deal with it until it's removed.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever tools that you have been given, and you got to search deep inside to find those, to get through there, to get through that, because that takes unnatural things to get through that, almost a supernatural type way where I just feel like, hey, why not me? Why? Because you know what that does? It empowers you to move forward when you have gone from why me to why not me. What that says is, why me is like, I'm not going to deal with, I don't want to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Why not me now says, you know what? I need to start living, and I need to start dealing with this right now. And that is freeing. And that is where growth really starts to take place. When you embrace the difficult situations, when you embrace the adversity, when you embrace the disappointment, and you make that a part of your recipe for success. When you make a cake, if you were to eat each of the ingredients separately, it's not very tasty. If I just ate the flour or I just ate the sugar, it doesn't taste very good. Mm-hmm. But when you put all that stuff together that didn't taste so good by itself, and you mix it in with what you're called to do and what you're put on earth to do, it makes a cake of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you can actually enjoy. And once you start, it's so interesting for me, as difficult as this journey has been, the enjoyment I get from eating pieces of those cakes, impacting people's lives, and seeing the response, studies have shown that when you serve and give to others, it benefits you.
Yep,
people's blood pressure goes down, sugar levels go down. All of these things scientifically have been proven. And on top of that, I get a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I get a really good feeling about that. And so that was my objective and goal when I talked to her. I also didn't want to judge her.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share love with her and say, hey, this is what I think you should do. And, we all have had decisions that we made that haven't been in our best interest, but you're living. And as long as you're living, you can change. You can not only change, you can change your circumstances, you can change how you see things, and you can change those around you. And she was 18 years old. I'm like, you got a lot of life left in front of you. Yeah. Now it's not the time to check out. And that's all I knew to tell her, because that's what my life had been up to that point. And you can't speak from what you don't have. You can't give what you don't have. And I only gave what I had, and my experience taught me for that 2.5 years I'd been in a wheelchair, that your ability to endure is much greater than your willingness to endure. And once you figure that out, it's no looking back. It's almost like you learn how to define success in a much different way. It's much different now. It's not about things or material things, but it is about the satisfaction of knowing that I've done what I was supposed to do. I made it through this thing. I made it through. I don't even know. I can only imagine I don't even know where she is now or how old that boy is, but I can only imagine the joy that he brought her.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that.
Well, I loved that part. There's so many good parts of your book, honestly. I mean, I've read a ton of books in my life for personal development that have been my tools to help me get through my adversity. And yours is just at the top of the list for me forever, because there's so many great nuggets like that in there. And that story really moved me. And so I wanted you to share about it, because I think people can learn that, we're able to be beacons for other people through challenges, and share, our experience, and certainly not tell people what to do. But if people come to us and ask, it's okay to share what we feel and believe. And I just love the outcome of that. So there is a lot more to talk about with you, and we only have so much time. But all these incredible things that you've been able to do, David, are just extraordinary to me. All the while, like you said, just it's not about your injury. It's just about who you are and what you've been able to do just out of that experience. So I want to know what's next. What's next for David Cooks? Because I know there's a lot of stuff going on. So I want you to share about it. We got
a few things going on. I plan on launching my podcast. It's called Paralysis to Purpose, and hopefully we'll have it out April 1st of 2021. So that's new for me, and learning how to edit and do all those different things.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
It's a journey, to say the least. I'm going to do that. I'm going to I will do more coaching of people, life coaching and executive coaching on the business side, on the personal side. And then, I'm in a transition like everyone right now, and going from public to virtual in terms of sharing my story. So, I mean, if I can do those things and figure out how to better use calls and options in the marketplace to make some money in the stock market, I'll be doing pretty good.
Well, that certainly is in the news right now as we're recording this, isn't it?
That's right. What a time, huh?
Wow, it's crazy. There's so many things that have happened in the last couple of years that just really make you scratch your head, but then also, transformational. Like,
that's right.
Learn from it. And before we go on that too, like, I just want to touch a little bit on your, if people do want to be able to find you for coaching, one of your expertise areas is obviously business and finance. So you're a business coach. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about before we go, especially because you use the terminology of paralysis. When you're forging a path to purpose, when you're forging a new business, when you're doing anything, sometimes you can let yourself get paralyzed in the fear of doing it, or the steps, emotional paralysis, financial paralysis, all those things. Can you talk about how people can help? Obviously, they can reach out to you for coaching, which I highly recommend people do, because it's hard to navigate that on your own. But what do you recommend people do when they're feeling that it's not a metaphor, it feels real when you're in that state?
Yeah. I think when you're in that state of paralysis and you have a goal ahead of you that you have established, you want to start this business, or you want to handle your money better, or whatever it might be. You have to keep that goal right in your vision at all times, because that's what you're trying to reach. When you take your eyes off of that, you see all these other things that are in your way of getting there. And it goes back to that perspective thing again. You have to keep your eye on the prize, and look forward and not behind. A rear view mirror is great for driving, but it's terrible for living. So don't look back, keep looking forward. Again, make measurable steps that you can be proud of. Don't try to do too much at one time. Be open to learning. Be open to saying, I don't know how to do that. I need to get help with that. Be open to getting help. You don't have to make the journey alone. I think that is one of the most challenging things, especially for entrepreneurs and people who have that mindset that this is mine and I'm starting this business. I get it, but there's nothing wrong with getting help along the way, because look, you and I each are equipped uniquely to fulfill our own purpose and our own destiny, and no one else's. And so it's interesting. Destiny requires that we come to the finish line alone, but it doesn't mean we can't have help along the way to get there.
Mm.
And that's what I love about it. If once you understand that and you reach out and know that, yes, I have a specific thing that I'm going to get to my end of, but along the way, destiny does not say you can't get help and you can't get assistance. You have to do that. So that would be my advice, is get some help, be open to learn, be open to growth, let yourself make mistakes. Failing does not mean you're a failure. Fail forward if you can, but if you fall backward, get up. And as long as there is time on the clock, you can make a difference in the game, and you just have to compete. Keep competing. Competing is important. That's part of getting from paralysis to purpose. It's not going to be an easy journey. You've got to compete. And as long as there's time on the clock, because at some point, there'll be zeros on that clock in the game that you're playing over, and then you can't contribute anymore. So contribute, and when you get done contributing, take a look at the scorebook and see how you did. How many points did I have in that game? Did I have any steals that game? Did I get any rebounds that game? You need to look at that and let yourself know what you've done. Sometimes I think we don't celebrate ourselves enough. We don't celebrate the victories that we've had. We don't do it in the name of humility. And I think that is not what humility is. I think learning how to celebrate yourself is learning how to do that in a way of humility. But we must do that. We must do that.
Oh gosh, those are such great words to close with, because it's true. We are so hard on ourselves, and we don't celebrate ourselves enough. And so thank you for sharing those words of wisdom. David Cooks, my new hero I get to put in my hero bucket. I just love you, and I'm so honored that you came on this show. Will you, before we go, please tell people where they can find you?
Absolutely. And of course, I would love to come and speak at your company. So you can find me. My website is davidcookspeaks.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And my handle is @DCE Speaks. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn, David Cook Speaks, MBA. So that's where you can get a hold of me. And I look forward to talking with some of you. And I want to thank you, Alyssa, for this opportunity. You are a great host. I mean, you're really good at what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I have no skills at this. I just did it because it was a passion, and I wanted to be able to shine a spotlight on incredible folks like you. And thank you so much. That means a lot to me coming from you. And everyone, I will take that into my heart, and I'll know that that's my path to purpose. Everyone, please do go to our website, aworldonpurpose.com. All of David's information will also be there. And I would just love to know what you all feel about this episode, and really look to bringing David in as a coach. Clearly, he has that skill set in spades in every aspect of life. And I think if you're stuck in any way, you're not sure where to go on your path to purpose, in any area of your life, not just purpose, I think David could be a tremendous help to you. So David Cooks, thank you for being on my show. And I really look forward to seeing your new podcast.
Well, thank you. And it's been my pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. Me too. And everyone, thank you for tuning into World on Purpose. You know, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Come back again next week for another new inspiring guest, and I will see you then. Thank you for taking this journey into a world on purpose with our incredible guests. To learn more about our amazing guests and their inspiring purpose-driven work, please go to aworldonpurpose.com. Don't forget to look at our call to action of the week to mobilize your desire for purpose into action. A World on Purpose can be found on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast platforms, and the video version can be found on YouTube. If what you heard today inspires you, please write a review and like and share on the platform of your choice. We'd love to also hear from you and learn your pivot to purpose and the meaningful work that you do that lifts humanity. Send your stories to info@aworldonpurpose.com. I'd like to thank our World on Purpose team for making this show a reality. Once again, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Thank you for tuning in to A World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you soon.